We're going to talk about self-advocacy today. That's what we're going to talk about today. I want to look at all the details of it. We're going to look at what is self-advocacy and why is self-advocacy important and how do you advocate for yourself. That's what we're going to talk about today. So if you have any questions or comments, you can put them in the live chat, and I will attempt to respond to those comments and questions as we go along. But just an introduction, I'm Lorenzo Brown, and I'm the Executive Director of the Is Able Center located here in Birmingham, Alabama. And we provide various programs and services that enhances the quality of life for individuals with disabilities. And we are partnering with Alabama Care to bring a live video once a month for the next 12 months around topics that will, benefit and enhance the quality of life for individuals with disabilities. So, what is self-advocacy? What is self-advocacy? Self-advocacy is can be a lot of different things, but to just sum it up is when a person has the ability to speak up for themselves. Self-advocacy gives a person with a disability a voice, an opportunity to be a part of decisions and things that concern their lives. And so I want to look at a couple points and kind of briefly speak on those points as we go along. What is self-advocacy? What is self-advocacy? Point number one, self-advocacy is learning how to speak for yourself. As a person with a disability, that is something that I really had to learn to do for myself. 17 years old, I found myself, paralyzed and left unable to do many things that I was able to do for myself. So now all of a sudden I have someone that has to give me a bath and put my clothes on and help me go to the bathroom and do a lot of other things, and all of a sudden I lost my voice. I stopped speaking for myself and I let someone else do it for me. And once I lost that voice, it was really hard for me to get that voice back. I had to fight real hard to get that voice back. But it's learning how to speak for yourself. And oftentimes what happens in the lives of people with disabilities is that they are socially undeveloped, very shy, very reserved, even adults with disabilities at times. And let's take for instance a child that was born with a disability. Well, all of their lives, their parents have been speaking for them. And so now that they have become an adult and it's time for them to learn to speak for themselves, well, because they really never had a voice for themselves, they don't really know how to step out front and speak for themselves on matters that concern and relates to their lives. And so what happened is that whenever they're in the room with that parent or that caregiver that they're used to speaking for them, whenever somebody asks them a question, the first thing they do is just look over to the person that they're used to speaking for them. So you have to learn to speak for yourself. That's what self-advocacy is. It's learning how to speak for yourself. And that's going to be a challenge in the beginning. It really is. It really is going to be a challenge in the beginning, learning how to speak for yourself, but it is a very, very important thing. Okay, number two, self-advocacy is making your own decisions about your life. Making your own decisions about your life. As you begin to come into adulthood, for those who are adolescents who are on the line, or as you begin to come into adulthood, or for those who are already adults, you have to learn how to make your own decisions about your life. They're going to be let's kind of touch on some points as it relates to maybe some adolescents who are coming out of high school, going into adulthood, and now it's time for them to make some real big decisions about what's the next steps that relates to my life. Okay. So that you're going to have to think about maybe, do I go to college or not go to college? Or do I want to work? If I do want to work, what type of job can I work? You know, what am I physically, mentally, emotionally capable of doing? You know, you have to think about all of those things, and you have to make decisions around all of those things. It may be that you know, you're wanting to date or get married or whatever. You have to make decisions around those things, and all of those things are very, very important decisions as it relates to your life. But they are big decisions, and there are going to be many, many decisions that you have to make as it relates to your life. But you have to learn how to make your own decisions as it relates to your life. I want to take a questions that is in the chat box. It says, what is something someone could do in the next week to start learning to speak for yourself? So if you want to respond to that, that's a question there in the chat box. I got another question here. It says, I wonder how many young children and young adults have a team of SDMs. Kim Spangler, if you will, let them know what SDMs are. Let them know what SDMs are. That's the question they're asking there. And I'll come back to that when I see it pop in the chat box. So yeah, you have to learn how to make your own decisions as it relates to your life. Early on in me becoming paralyzed, I ended up going to a nursing home, and I stayed in a nursing home for close to 2.5 years. Well, when it came time for me to come out of that nursing home, you know, I didn't want to stay in a nursing home for the rest of my life. I wanted to have my own apartment and, you know, and live a life just like everybody else. Well, the very first thing someone told me was, well, you can't live by yourself. Well, why can't I live by myself? Well, because you're paralyzed. Well, what does that mean? So instantly I was limited. Instantly I was told that I could not do something by someone else. And that they wanted to impact the decisions that I was going to make about my own life. You know, and so I had to step out. That was a real big deal. And you know, I had to, you know, learn how to do a lot of things on my own, gather, you know, the right information I need, you know, what type of caregivers I was going to need, and how many bills I was going to have to pay, and how much money I was going to need to cover those bills. All of those different things that relate when it comes to decisions about your life. Okay, let's go to point number 3. Self-advocacy is learning how to get information so that you understand things that are of interest to you. Learning how to get information so that you understand things that are of interest to you. What are you interested in? You know, all of us have our own personalities and own passions and about different things. And oftentimes, like, let's say again, going back to maybe a young person growing up, maybe your parents decided that for you all of your life, told you, you know, what was good for you, and, you know, geared you or kind of guided you rather towards a certain hobby or interest, but it really was not what you wanted to do. But you really didn't know how to advocate for yourself. You didn't know how to speak up for yourself. And so that's what self-advocacy is. That's one thing self-advocacy is. You have to learn how to get the information so that you understand the things that you are interested in. Getting out there. You know, getting on the computer, gathering things, reading things, you know, gathering the right information that you need about things that interest you. Okay, number 4, what is self-advocacy? It's finding out who will support you in your journey. It's finding out who will support you in your journey. So as you're making a lot of big life decisions, and once again, it does also come back to, what type of disability does this person have? What are their capabilities? Is it something intellectual? Is it something physical? Or and you have to look at all of those different things, because all of those things, are going to impact the decisions that you make as you move forward in your life. But you have to find out who will support you in that journey. Who's going to support you in that journey? Is it parents? Is it family? Is it siblings? Is it friends? Is it different organizations in the community that offer various services that can help you reach your goals and meet your needs? You have to get your team together. You have to get your team together, and that's going to be a very, very important part of you being successful as you move forward in life. Okay, last point I want to make here with point number 5. What is self-advocacy? Point number 5. What is self-advocacy? It's knowing your rights and responsibility. It's knowing your rights and responsibilities. Let's talk about rights for a moment. You have to understand, what are your rights? What do I have the right to do that someone else tell me that I cannot do? Know your rights. Know your rights. That's very, very important. Also, what are your responsibilities? Understand what your responsibility is. Your responsibilities are, because as you begin to advocate for yourself about various things that you want to do, speaking up for yourself, you also got to understand what are the responsibilities that come with that. If you're going to advocate for yourself, if you're going to push out and advocate for things that interest you and things that you desire and you're passionate about, well, you can't get to a certain point when the responsibilities come that you now want to draw back and you want somebody else to take the lead again. That's not how it works. So you got to understand, what are your rights and what are your responsibilities. So that's what self-advocacy is. That's what self-advocacy is. Okay. If you have any questions, comments, put them in the chat box, and I will answer those questions as we move along. But let's go to the next step. Why is self-advocacy important? Why is self-advocacy important? Probably the number one reason why self-advocacy is important is because it gives you a voice. It gives you a voice about things that concern your life. That's what self-advocacy does. And it's very, very important. And honestly, it could very well be one of the most life-changing things that you learn to do. That's why it's important. It's very, very important. Otherwise, your life and the things that are of interest to your life are always going to be controlled by someone else if you don't learn to advocate for yourself. Go back to when I was about to get my very first apartment, and the person told me, well, you can't live on your own. I said, well, why not? It's because you're paralyzed. I said, well, what do you want me to do? Well, you need to go back to the nursing home for a little while. Well, I just didn't feel like that was the direction that the Lord had for my life. So I had to step out, and I'm going to tell you, it was a real big step, a real major step. It came with a lot of challenges, and it came with a lot of responsibilities. Well, I ended up getting my own apartment, and when I did, I recall the Department of Human Resources coming into my home and telling me that they was going to petition the courts to put me back in the nursing home because I could not live on my own, and they was trying to take away my voice. They was trying to take away, my ability to make decisions as it related to my life. And I'll never forget when DHR left, and for about 2 months I didn't hear anything. I ended up going to the mailbox one day, and I got a letter in the mail, and it was from the judicial system, and they had petitioned a judge, and the judge denied their petition and told them, no, you have to give Mr. Brown you know, the choice and the right to make decisions as it relates to his life. He has the right to choose whether or not he want to live on his own, just like anybody else. And so that judge understood, my rights, and as it related to me as a person living with a disability, that right wasn't just taken away from me just because I became, a person that now lives with a disability. And so that's why self-advocacy is important, so that you have a voice, so that you have a voice. Okay, let's touch on a couple points there. Okay, point number one, why is self-advocacy important? So that you have the knowledge needed to succeed. It's important so that you have the knowledge needed to succeed. Very important. If you don't have the right knowledge, meaning that if you don't have the right understanding about what it is that you're trying to do, how you're trying to do it, if you're not acquiring the right knowledge, you're just not going to succeed at it. You're just not going to succeed. And that's why self-advocacy is important, because otherwise what will happen, if everybody is in the room but you, then other people know what's going on, but you don't. So you need to be in the room so that you can have the knowledge needed so that you can succeed as well. You need to know everything that is going on as it relates to your life and your future. That's why it's important. Okay, number two. Why is self-advocacy important? Number two. So that you are given the chance to participate in decisions that are being made about your life. People will gladly take that away from you if you allow them to take that away from you. You have to understand, and you have to be aware of all the decisions that are being made about your life. You got to be in the room. And the only way that you're going to be in the room is if you learn how to advocate for yourself. And it's not going to be an easy thing. It's just not going to be an easy thing. There are going to be challenges. There are going to be a lot of drawback, and to be honest with you, that drawback can come from parents. It can come from caregivers. It can come from, people that you love, and oftentimes I don't think that parents and people that you love, mean you any harm or anything like that. It's just that, they're so used to sheltering you, they pretty much shelter you all of your life, and they've kind of, in a sense, kept you from, the challenges and, the trials and tribulations that can come, from the world. And so just probably out of love and no real ill will intent, kind of keep you out of the loop per se, trying to protect you. But that's not the way that it should be done. So hopefully, if there's some parents or some caregivers or some loved ones that are, are on here today, or you may hear this later on, understand that, you got to cut the cord. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be a part of their journey. You're still going to be a part of their team. They're always going to need you in their life, but you got to cut the cord, and you got to give them the opportunity to grow, to learn, to grow, as a man, as a woman, to become, a responsible adult, and learn how to advocate and speak up for themselves. Because the truth of the matter is that there will come a day when you're not here anymore. And where you thought you were, acting in love, now you have really hindered them, from being all that they can be, because now their voice is gone. So if you never allow them to have a voice, when it comes time for them to speak for themselves, they're not going to know how to. So you got to let them have a voice. You have to let them have a voice. Cut the cord, per se. If you're in the room and you're the one that normally speaks, if they turn to you expecting you to speak for them, you say, no, speak for yourself. You have the ability to speak up for yourself and make decisions as it relates to your life. You have that right, and that's your responsibility as well. Now, if they have, some intellectual challenges that prevent them from answering certain questions, then of course, you're going to assist them, in making those decisions. But it's still very, very important that you are teaching them how to make those decisions for themselves, in their lives. So Kim Spangler, we're still waiting on you to tell us what SDMs are. Still waiting on you to tell us that. Okay, so let's go to our last point in our message today is how do you advocate for yourself? How do you advocate for yourself? This is very, very important because advocating in the right way is very important. It's the only way that you are going to get a person's ear, have people to truly respect the decisions that you are making. So advocating in the right way is very, very important. Okay. How do you advocate for yourself? Number one, you have to be assertive in your approach, but not aggressive or passive. You have to be assertive in your approach, but not aggressive or passive. Okay, let's look at what being assertive, aggressive, and passive is. Okay, I'm gonna give some examples for each one. Okay, being assertive is when you give eye-to-eye contact. You're speaking with a firm voice, as to say, for instance, if somebody will say, well, they're interested in being a part of A and B team. Well, if you're really not interested in being a part of A and B team, being assertive is saying, no, excuse me, mom, dad, or whoever it is that is with you, no, I'm not interested in being a part of A and B team. As a matter of fact, I'm really interested in being a part of C and D team. That's being assertive. You did it in a calm way, a respectful way, but you was firm about it too. Let's say if you go somewhere and there's no one with you, and they say, well, I think you may like sitting over here. I think this is a better spot for you over here. Well, if that's not the spot that you want to sit at, you say to them, no, actually, I would like to sit over there. That's being assertive. That's being assertive. Once again, you eye-to-eye contact, your voice was firm, it was not disrespectful in any way, but you spoke up for yourself. That's being assertive. Okay? So let's talk about passive. Being passive. Passive is just the opposite of being assertive. Let's go back to the examples that we gave. You're with someone and they say to you, well, they're interested in A and B team. Being passive will say, yeah, I guess I am interested in being part of A and B team. But really deep down inside, that's really not what you're interested in. But because you did not want to oppose the person that was with you or offend the person that was with you, you just went along with, what they said, to keep them happy, keep them content. That's being passive. You go somewhere, you're alone, and they say, well, I think sitting over here will be a better place for you. even though that's not really where you want to sit, but you'll say, okay, yeah, I guess that'll be a good place for me. That's passive. That's passive. You can't be passive when you're trying to advocate for yourself. Okay, lastly, let's talk about being aggressive. When you are aggressive, you really lose your voice. You don't gain a voice being aggressive. You lose respect. You lose people's ear. Nobody really wants to deal with an aggressive person. I remember early on in my disability, I was so, so mad at the world because I was now paralyzed that, I would take that, that anger out on anybody. People who was trying to help me, they never could do anything right. They could be helping me get my clothes on. I'd be, you can't do anything right. Can you do this and do that? I was so angry that when I communicated aggressively. And it caused me to lose people's respect. And, if somebody did come to help me, they just did it out of pity. It's not because they really wanted to, because nobody wants to be around a person who has a bad attitude, who's aggressive all the time, who's angry all the time. Yeah, maybe you are dealing with some challenges, but, it doesn't give you the right, to, take it out on anyone else. You can't be aggressive in your approach when you are advocating for yourself. And oftentimes, and I've seen this, so many times, with individuals who live with disabilities. I'll be in a grocery store and I'll see them, talking so rudely to the person who is with them. Or, I can, be at a certain meeting somewhere and I see them talking so aggressively to the person who is with them. Well, you're not advocating for yourself properly that way. You're just not. Nobody respects the voice of an aggressive person. So being aggressive doesn't work. Being passive doesn't work. Being assertive works. Gets your point across. It wins the ear of the person that you are talking to. They respect you in that manner. Okay? How do you advocate for yourself? Point number 2. Don't be fearful of or intimidated by the opposition. Don't be fearful of or intimidated by the opposition. So, as you are advocating for yourself, there are going to be some opposing forces. There always is. That's the point of advocating, because you are opposing what the other individual, or the opposition has to say or is doing as it relates to your life. So you can't be fearful of or intimidated of the opposition. Now, to be honest with you, sometimes a parent can be the opposition. A loved one can be the opposition. A caregiver can be the opposition. I'm not saying that they are against you or anything like that, but a parent can be a very fearful force. A parent can be very intimidating. A caregiver, a loved one can be very fearful, very intimidating. And so when you're trying to advocate for yourself, and you're not wanting to upset, the opposing, person, you can begin to draw back, become very timid, very fearful. Well, you have to really learn how to, speak up and face, those fears as it relates to who the person is, and to be honest with you, parents, they know that they can be intimidating. Caregivers, they know that they can be intimidating. Family members, they know that they can be intimidating. But you as an individual, you cannot be fearful or intimidated of the opposition. And not just that, not just those as well, but as you go out into the world, you're visiting different places, different businesses, different companies, different organizations. You can't be fearful and intimidated as to, what it is your right to have or your right to do as you're visiting, those places, those businesses, those organizations as well. So you have to, grow a backbone per se, and be willing to speak up despite what the who and what the opposition is. For example, I remember when I was in a nursing home. I was just a young kid. I was actually 18 years old, and I had not had a bath like the whole day. And I would hit the call light I must have hit that call light from 9 a.m. that morning to close to 3 p.m. that afternoon, trying to get someone to come down. They always say, well, somebody's coming down, somebody's coming down. Well, the shift was going to change at 3 p.m. And I knew that if I did not get a bath on the first shift, that the second shift, was going to come in and say, well, it was the first shift's responsibility. So we're not going to be able to do it. And so I remember at probably about 2:30 hitting the call light again. And the guy who was my caregiver, he came down to the room and he burst in the room and he screamed as loud as he could, "You're not the only EMF in here." And he grabbed a pillow and he's about to put it over my face and smother me. Right when another aide walked in the room, and then he pretended like he was placing that pillow under my head and making me comfortable. Now, I'm going to tell you something. That was a very fearful thing. To be placed in a position where somebody could just so easily take your life. Somebody who's supposed to care for you and meet your needs could, at any moment, put a pillow over your face and smother you, simply because you wanted a bath. I was so fearful and so intimidated that I had lost my voice for a long time. And what began to happen is that I began to be severely abused and neglected because I didn't say anything. And they realized that I was fearful and I was intimidated. And so they just began to, instead of coming in my room, they passed my room. Instead of giving me my bath, they just skipped that. Maybe I'll be the last one to, get my food tray that day. Just little things like that. And it's because they knew I was just so afraid to say anything. I remember praying and really asking the Lord to empower me. And I took the initiative to call the state ombudsman. And I made a complaint. State ombudsman, addressed the issue, called the nursing home, talked with the administrator about it. And I told the administrator, I didn't want that call. I wanted the whole nursing home to know that I was no longer going to be mistreated, abused, and neglected. And I started speaking up for myself. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. Did that make things a little harder for me by me being at the mercy of other people that had to care for me? Yes, it did. They would do little things like whenever they come in my room, they had, wouldn't come in my room by themselves. And whenever they would be turning me and helping me, they'll be turning me forcefully and different things like that. So yeah, that happened. But what stopped was I got my baths when I was supposed to get my bath. I got my food tray when I was supposed to get my food tray. And it's because I began to advocate for myself that I was no longer going to be fearful and intimidated about the opposition. So, yeah, it will be fearful, it will be intimidating, but you got to do it even if you're afraid. Okay, last point that I want to make today before we bring our message to an end. Okay. Number 3, how do you advocate for yourself? Be determined to see change. Be determined to get what you're needing. And be determined to participate in matters that concerns your life. I'm going to say that again. Be determined to see change. Be determined to get what you're needing. And be determined to participate in matters that concerns your life. I said be determined. Why did I say that? Because the truth of the matter is that life never gets easy. As soon as you get past one challenge, there's going to be another challenge. And especially if you are a person who lives with a disability, you already, when you wake up in the morning, you already got a challenge that you got to face, because you got to do everything in a different way that other people do it. But yet you're still expected to produce the same results. You understand? My wife don't care anything about me being disabled. She still want me to be a great husband. My kids don't care anything about me being disabled. They still want me to be a great father. I don't get no pass. My employees and people that come into this center, they don't care anything about me being disabled. I don't get no pass. They still want to be treated fairly. They still want to get quality results when they come here. So yeah, you already have a challenge. So you got to carry that as well as face all of the daily challenges that come with life too. So you got to be determined, because life doesn't get easier. You have to get stronger. Life doesn't get easier. You have to get stronger. With every challenge, you got to be determined that I'm going to get past this too. Matter of fact, I saw this really great article yesterday. This girl, when she was 5 years old, she contracted some kind of very rare disease that left her paralyzed at 5 years old. And she went on, to graduate high school. And of all things, her goal was to become a registered nurse. So here she is, a fully wheelchair user. And her goal is to become a registered nurse. She talked about all of the hassle and the opposition and drawback that she got. Everybody telling her, you cannot be a nurse, in a wheelchair, and how are you going to do this with patients, and how are you going to do that with patients? And she got so much drawback, but that girl went on to graduate and became a registered nurse. Okay. Well, she's a registered nurse in New York. When the pandemic hit, New York got hit really hard. And people with disabilities, especially somebody who's paralyzed, they was a part of the vulnerable part of community, society, that, COVID-19 could really hit. Well, despite this girl being disabled, she said to herself, I feel like as a registered nurse that I need to be out there serving despite my disability. That girl got up, went to work every single day in New York City in the midst of the hardest hit area of the pandemic, and she served as a registered nurse every single day. Powerful story. There was a local foundation who heard about this girl's story, and they awarded this girl a $1 million unrestricted grant because of her heroism. Powerful. She was determined. See, there are great rewards that come when you're determined. Great rewards. Rewards that you will not regret. Where I am today, the things that I have accomplished, the things that I have succeeded at, it was simply because I was determined. So, thank you all so much for joining us today. Really, really appreciate it.